Was America democratic during the Second World War? Not really. Here's the harsh truth. We're told that the United States fought the Second World War as the shining champion of democracy. Free elections, rule of law, civil liberties, the whole package. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to admit. America in the Second World War was democratic on paper, but authoritarian in practice. Not fascist, not totalitarian, but absolutely not the kind of free democracy Americans love to imagine. Let's break it down. 1. The illusion of democracy. Elections do not equal freedom. Yes, the United States held elections during the war. Yes, the Constitution still existed. But democracy isn't just paperwork. A real democracy requires competitive elections, real checks and balances, civil liberties, protection of minority rights, an informed and free public. During the Second World War, most of these disappeared, not abolished, but suffocated. 2. Roosevelt's 4 terms. Legal, but not democratic in spirit. Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected 4 times. That's not democracy, that's political entrenchment. Was it legal? Yes. Was it free? Technically, yes. Was it democratic in any meaningful sense? No. When a nation is terrified, when the world is collapsing, when war propaganda dominates every newspaper, calling those free elections becomes a joke. Why did America immediately pass the 22nd Amendment after the war, limiting presidents to 2 terms? Because even Americans understood. Roosevelt's wartime presidency concentrated power in one man to a dangerously undemocratic degree. 3. The darkest evidence. Internment of Japanese Americans. This alone destroys the myth of wartime American democracy. More than 120,000 Japanese Americans. 2/3 were U.S. citizens. No trial. No charges. No evidence. Forced into camps behind barbed wire. This was collective punishment based on race. The very thing America claimed to be fighting abroad. A country that strips its own citizens of rights because of ancestry cannot pretend to be a functioning democracy. 4. War powers created presidential authoritarianism. During the Second World War, the federal government took powers that in any other context would be called authoritarian. Command over the entire economy. Strict control of industry and prices. Censorship of military news. FBI surveillance of dissidents. Propaganda integrated into Hollywood. Drafting millions into compulsory service. A democracy does not forcibly direct the lives of millions of citizens at the state's command. The United States did. 5. Freedom of the press? Not during the Second World War. Mainstream media aligned almost completely with the government's war narrative. Not because they were forced, but because wartime censorship, voluntary cooperation, and pressure from the Office of War Information created a perfect storm of controlled messaging. The result? A public inundated with propaganda and shielded from the darkest realities of the war. Without an independent press, democracy is a slogan, not a system. 6. Racial minorities had no democratic rights. Let's be honest. Black Americans in the 1940s did not live in a democracy. Jim Crow laws in the South prevented millions of black citizens from voting. Poll taxes, illiteracy tests, intimidation, violence, segregation in every public space, unequal education, no political representation. A state that denies a major part of its population basic political rights cannot be called a full democracy, wartime or not. Women, too, had almost zero political power despite having the vote. 7. Elite rule, not popular sovereignty. Wartime decision-making was dominated by industrialists, military leaders, government insiders, a Wall Street, foreign policy elites. Ordinary Americans had almost no influence over military strategy, diplomatic decisions, industrial planning, rationing policy, surveillance programs. This is elite governance, not democracy. 8. War creates emergency autocracy, and America embraced it. One of the most important truths about wartime America is this. Democracy was suspended in everything but name. The Constitution survived. The democratic spirit didn't. Power flowed upward, not downward. Civil liberties shrank. The executive branch dominated. Citizens were expected to obey, sacrifice, and not question. That is not democracy. That is emergency authoritarianism wrapped in patriotic rhetoric. Conclusion: America was not fascist, but it was not truly democratic either. The United States in the Second World War existed in a strange gray zone. Not totalitarian like Nazi Germany, not democratic like modern mythology claims, but a centralized, elite-run, war-mobilized state, where dissent was muted, freedom was limited, and millions of citizens lost their rights. So yes, America kept the facade of democracy. Elections, courts, Congress, all still there. But the reality? A wartime authoritarian democracy, democratic in form, authoritarian in practice. And that's the part of Second World War history America almost never talks about.